All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad to have everybody here. What a great event. So my name is Scott Rouse. I'm the Global Head of Customer Success for FileWave. I just barely missed the last Alliance meeting and was bummed to have missed everybody, but I'm glad to be here today and thrilled to have everybody attending. So I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come to this event. We've got lots of fantastic information for you, particularly with the stars of our show, Tony and Josh, who are going to help explain quite a bit that's going on with the product through our agenda there. But I just want to say for a minute, I thank you so much for coming. Myself and my team are always very excited to talk to you, to hear about your experience with FileWave, to hear about things that are going well for you and things that you're struggling with, either from a business standpoint or a technical standpoint. So don't ever hesitate to reach out to me, reach out to anybody on the customer success team, and we'll work as hard as we can to get you set and get you in place. So today's agenda, obviously, I'm welcoming you here right now. We're going to go through some of the items in the newest release of FileWave here with some special introduction to content packs and talk about what's coming up and what to look forward to in the future. I'm not going to spoil any of the surprises. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Tony Keller and Josh, who are going to walk you through what's happening in the future here. Go ahead.
All right, good morning, good day, everyone. Thanks you so much for joining. As always, we love doing these events, and we're so happy that you're here. And especially, I say it was really kind of a thrill to put together the few slides here that we've got today, because we've got so much great stuff to share with you. We've heard your feedback. We're trying to keep this a little bit limited, so that's why we've only scheduled an hour today. So we're going to be moving with alacrity through the things that we've got to cover, but we've got a lot to share, and we're going to have some kind of special events as well. A few more events than just these Alliance events. So we're going to talk about those in a second. And the other thing that was kind of a thrill is when we were putting these slides together to see just how much there is to share. So the very first thing we have here, Josh, do you want to talk about our events calendar?
Yeah, we realized that we didn't really have a central place to put not just Discord events, because we do a bunch of events over in Discord, but things like this, when we do new releases so that you can see it on the calendar. And this calendar, it's nice because you can actually, at the very bottom of it, there's an add to calendar button, and you can actually, in my case, I use Outlook. And so I have an extra calendar in my Outlook that shows all the FileWave stuff. So as a customer or a partner, you would have an easier time knowing when things are happening. Right now, the Discord events are in there. The Alliance events are getting added there. Software releases are in there. And I'm going to work to add other events, like if we're at Mac Admins at Penn State or somewhere else, I'm going to work with marketing to make sure that we have all the various events, make it real easy to see.
And throughout the presentation today, there will be a number of topics that we touch on because we're only going to touch on them today where we want to go into a deeper dive. And so we'll mention each of those where there's a related Discord event. Right? So we can go to the next slide there, Josh, if you like. And the first thing we're going to talk about after these events is version 15.3. The graphic on the left is actually slightly outdated. We have 370 instances of FileWave that have been upgraded to version 15.3. It was released earlier this month. If you haven't upgraded yet, the things that are in this release are everything new with kiosk. So kiosks, and more kiosks. And we appreciate you all working with us on this. There's some great additions, but it was the first time we've touched that in a very long time. So that was really, had been really stable for folks, and we made some changes to it. We've gotten a lot of feedback. There'll be some further tweaks to it. But we love everything about the new kiosks so far, especially the auto deployment on the iOS side. We also have some Chromebook enhancements that are in 15.3, so there's some additional commands for Chromebooks. Dark mode in FileWave Central. I don't know if anybody out there, but has anybody switched to dark mode in 15.3? Just let us know in the chat if you have. We've made some booster improvements, touched just a little bit in DDM in 15.3, and then a whole bunch of bug fixes. So hopefully you're already on 15.3, but if you haven't gone there yet, you'll want to, and we've got a lot of great stuff in there. Josh, you want to talk about the kind of the security updates that we've had in there?
Yeah, so it's very important. We always talk about going to new releases for new features. Depending on how you use FileWave, maybe there's a release that doesn't necessarily have things that you feel are important to you, but you should always consider that there are security updates in every release of FileWave for the libraries that we use. And to just protect your environment, you should really always consider moving to the next version of FileWave and not staying behind, because these things can impact you if they're exploited. So we're very good at staying on top of third-party libraries and updating them. And sometimes you come to us and say, "Hey, I learned about this vulnerability." Most often, we say we already know about that, and it's queued up for the next release, or it just released yesterday, and so it's going to get queued up for the next release. So that's that.
And we're also going to bring Derek onto the stage here. Derek, you want to tell us a little bit about what support's been hearing? For those of you that aren't familiar with Derek, Derek's our head of support globally for FileWave.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I just wanted to come on here and just give you guys a little bit of info of some of the issues that we've been seeing with 15.3. So as Tony mentioned before, there's tons of additions when it comes to the kiosk. So of course, a lot of customers are reaching out to us about those. Probably one of the most noticeable with 15.3 is the iOS kiosk, or a lot of people refer to it as the app portal. It's now automatically deployed to the devices with 15.3. So no longer do you have to go to the download page, get the new IPA, upload it, and then make an association, deploy it. That's all now automatic on the back end. Where the issue is coming in, you have to make sure that we whitelist another URL for that to happen automatically. So kind of the way I've broken these down is, the first one is what the issue is, kind of what the symptom is number 2 bullet, and then the third bullet is the resolution, right? So for the app portal one, it's not installing automatically, so that means the symptom is it's not on the device when, users or yourself are trying to find it. And the resolution for that would just be making sure that you whitelist that. We've also made sure to update the TCP IP page, right? So it shows everything that needs to be whitelisted or allowed in your network for things to work. But that was the kind of the most noticeable one that people are reaching out for, is they're just not seeing that IPA automatically push. And so far that's kind of been the cause. A couple other things I want to mention about the IPA itself. If you haven't upgraded to 15.3 and you are using the App Portal IPA, there was a certificate that was going to expire in it. So we had to release a new version that is 15.2.2. So again, if you're on 15.3, you're good. It's going to deploy the correct one. But if you still haven't upgraded yet and you are using that IPA, you'll want to make sure you go to the downloads page, get the 15.2.2 that has the updated cert, and deploy that to your devices. If you're just using the web clip, then you're good to go. But then once you do upgrade, web clip's removed and the IPA is pushed everywhere. For the second one, we're switching gears to computers. So anybody that's managing Windows or Mac OS, and if you have customized your kiosk to always be available. The way the kiosk typically works on a computer is it's only visible if you have a kiosk association, but there's an actual setting, there's a file that you can customize to just have it always be visible. So what's happened is customers have that set, the new kiosk is automatically deployed, and so you end up with 2 on the device. So the resolution for that one is to either remove the customization of the old one, or you can go in and set it as true. For the third issue, this is pretty important for those of you that are managing Windows. We did have a couple customers reach out to us after upgrading. They had tested the deployment of the Windows upgrade file set, and the client either didn't upgrade or it wasn't running after the upgrade. So we've addressed that, and we uploaded a new upgrade file set to the downloads page. I highlighted the version number in bold, so that way you could compare what you have. But if you were to go to the downloads page today and just click on the upgrade file set for Windows, it's going to pull the most recent version. Obviously, if you're having any of these issues and you're struggling with them, feel free to reach out to my teams. The quickest and easiest way to get help is either using the ticketing portal at help.filewave.com, or you can just send an email to us right at help@filewave.com. But yeah, if you have obviously any issues that's not on that I haven't talked about today, feel free to reach out. We're always happy to help get you guys going where you need to go. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Derek.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we've got something special to share with you as well. Now, this is a little bit, this has been actually months in progress, or kind of in progress. Josh, can you go ahead and bring up that first image there? So we've been working for a series of months, actually from this last fall, where we started working on this idea of a compliance pack for Microsoft Defender, and how can we put together all the pieces of FileWave, right? FileWave is incredibly powerful. We can do so much with it. But sometimes you don't have the time to put all the pieces together. Sometimes you might not understand all the different pieces. Can you go back to that for just a second, Josh? So if you look at the kind of pieces that can all fit together in a workflow, we've got custom fields that can be, administrator custom fields or script-based custom fields. Those custom fields can feed groups and smart groups coupled together with file sets and file set groups. You might have, dependencies of file sets to do something. Like if we looked at TeamViewer as an example, right? TeamViewer, if you want to deploy TeamViewer, you have to deploy the application for TeamViewer to say Mac OS devices, but you have to deploy the TCC profile first, right? Building all these different components of these workflows can be a little bit complicated. So what we've come up with is this idea of content packs. What we've said to ourselves, what if we could just give you all the pieces of it, not just the file set? So we've done recipes for file sets for a long time. Although it's never enough, everybody would always like it to be more. But we said, what if we could give you all the pieces of the workflow in a way that you could just ingest them? So you can go ahead and click on that next one there, Josh. So we've built 4 types of content packs. There's one that we're calling a starter content pack. That's not for any of you all, but for our new customers, imagine when the day you started with FileWave, if you were able to set it up immediately and have a bunch of smart groups and things for your environment that are typical to your industry. So we've got, say, a starter pack for US K-12 customers. We've got a starter pack published for an SMB customer. We're building other verticals as we go. We've got performance packs, which are looking generally at FileWave performance. We're going to show you an example of that here in a second. We've got compliance packs, which are looking at compliance, so things like antivirus, anti-malware, security-related products, not just is it installed, but is it actually compliant? And all of these things stitched together. So for instance, if we looked at Microsoft Defender, we've got custom fields that are reading all of these different attributes about Defender. Is it working? Is it up to date? Are the definitions up to date? Is the right version installed? Is it on every device? And then building reports from there, and then layered on top of all of that, the dashboards that show the status of all these things in these workflows. So we've taken all of that bit and then built a special tool for being able to bring all of this data into FileWave. That was actually where most of our work has gone, because many of these things like smart groups and reports and dashboards, we don't have a mechanism in the product to export those and import those. So we've built a special tool to do this whole thing. And Josh, if you want to go ahead and start that video, we'll show you, kind of how one of these works.
Yeah, and one thing I want to mention is the Discord logo here. Whenever
That's right.
that, it means that we already have on that customer calendar a Discord event to dig into this further, let you ask more questions, and spend another 45 minutes if you want on just this topic.
Yeah, so we could talk more in detail on that later. So this is what this collection pack tool looks like once you download it for any particular thing. Eventually, this will be something that shows all of the different content packs that we have available. For now, they're individual downloads, but you run it, and then we're using a combination of API calls and your FileWave admin to be able to do all of these pieces. So this particular one is working on kind of we're calling kind of a FileWave overview report. So you can go ahead and start that, Josh.
Okay.
All right, so this is just a 2-minute little video here. It's going to ask us for our admin password and the API token that we can use to authenticate. And then it's taking this zip file, which is a combination in this case of no custom fields in this one, but inventory queries, as you can see, they're being imported, and dashboards that are being modified that are based on those inventory queries. So this is meant to be a whole solution, and the only thing you have to do once this completes, you'll see it here momentarily, is that we just need to import the new dashboard, and then we're all good. So you can see here that all these inventory queries have now come into the system. They weren't there before. Those have automatically been injected. And we have a dashboard that is able to pull those in now. So if we go into the web admin, and you can probably skip forward just a little bit there, Josh, to get to the Grafana piece.
Okay.
There we go. Right. So here in Grafana, all we need to do is go into dashboards, say new import, and then go get the JSON file that was built for you. So that is sitting locally in this, in the download folder that it was built for you programmatically. We open that up. We can't upload this one for you because there's no API token for doing so. That would be more work. But then you immediately get this dashboard that is immediately populated for your devices, everything in your environment. This is published today. And that's the QR code that was on the previous screen will take you right to those content packs. So as Josh mentioned, we're going to do an event for this specifically, but you can go check out the content packs that are published there today. There'll be an additional one for Microsoft Defender compliance that'll be published by end of day today.
Okay.
All right. And what's coming up next? So 15.4 is expected to release late May, right? We've got our noses to the grindstone on that. It's with our QA teams right now, and we're in planning stages of 15.5, but there's great stuff in 15.4. You've got searching and filtering in all the tabs of client info now, not just in the device details view. So for instance, when you go to your software update tab, you can actually search for an individual software update, which is great. We've got reports are now exposed to the dashboard through Prometheus, where you used to have to go and create those YML files. Now there's an interface in the product that allows you to say, hey, I need this one for my dashboard, and allows you to do that. But we're going to show you something else pretty special a little bit on that reporting side too. You can now import and export query definitions. And there's a couple of tweaks to the kiosk as well based on your feedback. Apple Software Update is now using DDM instead of MDM. PN, would you like to talk about that one a little bit? Unless we lost PN. I'll talk about that a little bit. So there's no visible differences in 15.4 with relation to software update for Macs and for iPads. There's nothing changed about the way that it is built. It still looks the same. Everything in the product looks the same, but it's now leveraging DDM instead of MDM. It looks like PN's with us now. PN, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I just got disconnected and when reconnected, I was not allowed to talk. I don't know. This tool knows me too much. So there are two main changes related to Apple software update in 15.4. So the main visible one is DDM, and the other one is we try to clean up a little bit the source of truth about software update. For those of you who have been with us for a super long time, when we started with software update, it was Mac only on Apple side, and we were using the offline catalog, which was downloaded, parsed by FileWave. And then Apple introduced MDM software update, and then we had a mix of both because we wanted to support devices which were not capable of MDM, sorry. And later, Apple introduced a third source of truth, which was called GDMF, so another catalog. So we had everything in FileWave, which makes it, to say the least, confusing, because you would have the same update 2 or 3 times showing up in FileWave, depending on which device would request the update. On top of that, MDM updates and macOS, they never worked perfectly together. It was always not working well, downloading updates were not working, installing updates were not working properly. And Apple response for that is go to DDM. So that's why we started to work on this in 15.3, and we introduced DDM for software update in 15.4. So what you will see in 15.4 is that we cleaned up a little bit the number of updates and the source of updates. So you will see just the updates which are from GDMF, so less duplicates, only the ones which we know that work. And to install updates on devices, it depends. On iOS, we still use MDM for devices which are not DDM capable, because most of the time installing updates from MDM works. So which means that on iOS, there will be probably no change for you. On macOS, as I said, MDM was never working well. And here we decided that it was better to have to cut the feature and have only working DDM instead of having MDM working sometimes. So, which means that, and I'm seeing the questions in the chat, yes, for macOS, the minimum required version is macOS Sonoma, because Apple introduced DDM only on macOS 14 Sonoma. So, which means that, unfortunately, managing OS updates will only be working with macOS 14, starting with FileWave 15.4. But again, we had the choice between something which was not working correctly, or most of the time not working, and cutting this part. So that's the visible part. So you will see less duplicates updates, no call to FileWave support, because you see 2 iPad updates, 14.7.5, and you don't know which one is for which device. So that should make your life a little bit simpler.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Pian. Right. Additionally, this one's also Apple related. We've some would say finally added the ability of the FileWave admin to check when you update your APN cert to make sure that it's the right account before you do it, so that you don't end up using the wrong Apple ID for that, because it's happened to folks. And certainly our support team is pretty happy about that, because we get a number of calls on that every year. We've also added in 15.4 the Chromebook commands that we added into FileWave Central in 15.3 are now added into FileWave Anywhere. And Josh, you wanted to talk a little bit about the upcoming changes for Firebase. And I think you were going to do a little demo of Wing It for us, weren't you?
Yeah, so why don't I'm going to first end sharing and then share my screen instead. Should be able to see my screen now. And then, okay, here we go. So on the Chromebook side, visually in the admin, I'll just show you real quick that, on the mobile tab, there's no more tab here for Firebase. Now we're still using Firebase, but instead of using the APIs we were using before, the list of APIs, there's only 2 APIs that we're concerned with. And then on here, the Google side, there's still that OAuth token. It still has a synchronization. I think in 15.3 we introduced the ability to make the synchronization happen more often. But if you're newly setting up Chromebooks, the process is 99% the same as it used to be. An existing customer that's going to 15.4 and wants to keep on managing Chromebooks because the API changes, there is a single URL that will be in the KB that you go to and authorize those 2 APIs for your existing Firebase project, and everything's off and running. You can see my console's running, doing the new method. So super simple.
So just to clarify on this one, Josh, this is related to the API deprecation from Google that everybody got an email about that told them, hey, you're managing Chromebooks and you're going to need to make this change. So you'll need to make a change, but it's not a change within the product. You'll just need to go and add an additional right, correct?
Yes, it's 2 additional APIs that you're enabling for the Firebase project. It's pretty simple. I did a new setup of Chromebooks on one server. I did a migration from the old method to the new one. It's very simple. And let's say the issue I could see someone running into is you can't upgrade to 15.4 for some reason for a little bit. And in June, the APIs get killed off. If you cross over the date where the APIs get killed off, you'll still see your Chromebooks report in. You'll lose a couple of things, like you can't do a verify, and I'm pretty sure you can't do a team viewer session, but you're not 100% broken. And once you enable those two APIs and get to 15.4, you're fully functional again. So there's no, like, I would encourage you to upgrade to 15.4 when it comes out, but if for some reason your business doesn't allow you to, then you will kind of temporarily a little bit break, and then you'll be completely fixed once you do the cut over to the new APIs in 15.4.
And this update is only pertinent for those who manage Chromebooks, right?
Yeah.
If you're not managing Chromebooks, this isn't for you. And the timing of the 15.4 release should be in the latter half of May.
Yes, and those APIs are dead in June, so you will have, not the biggest of windows, but it really is such a simple change. It'll be clicking on a URL, typing in your username and password on the Google side to enable those APIs and running 15.4. There isn't much.
Well, let me ask a question, Josh. So we're already supporting, Wing It. You could already use Wing It in FileWave. What do we possibly add that makes it better?
So when you set up Wing It today, you have to deal with pushing out the C++ libraries, WinGet itself, keeping it up to date. You have to then make each file set for each application you want, which is duplicating a file set, editing a script. There's some manual process. And plus, you have to run the WinGet command to search for the thing you want. So there are a few steps, and now it's so much better. If you go to Assistance, search WinGet, or if you go to File Sets and you do a new desktop file set, you'll see this cool new button. And so let's say, I'm a big fan of Notepad++, right? Notepad+. I won't even put the second plus on just to see what comes up. You'll get a bunch of results. Notepad++. And, it can help me to know this URL. It can help me to know the publisher and the author, just to know that I'm picking the right thing. In this case, this is the only Notepad++. I can double click this, or I can click Create File Set. I'm just going to double click this, and boom, here's the file set. All I need to do is make a deployment or an association, and I can send this out. And if I want to deal with whether I want it to upgrade when verifies happen, which is one of the things the WinGet documentation tells you how to do, all you'd have to do is double click on it, upgrade automatically at verify. Now every time if there's a new version and a verify happens, and a verify happens every 24 hours or at the device startup, and or if you ask it to do a verify, it will get the latest version if you want. If you want to pause and just kind of stick around on the same current version, you could just deselect that. This checkbox, you can cause it to uninstall when you delete the deployment or the association. So that can be helpful. There's a warning here because there are some applications, like I believe Firefox, where they don't honor the silent uninstall the way that Microsoft says it should be. So you should pretty much always, with anything you should test, but with this, you should associate it with something, see it install, break the association, see it remove, and then, expand on your testing just to be sure. But if I wanted to make a few things, right, so I made Notepad++, let's say I'm going to deploy the Brave browser, right, which Brave is popular, privacy-focused browser. I want to make a new file set group, WinGet, and I want to do, let's see, trying to think of all the things that were in my head.
Well, I think we talked about Greenshot and CyberDuck.
Greenshot, yeah. There's Greenshot, and the other cool thing is, as we're doing this, so I can do this better Notepad. I could do screen captures. I could do this secure browser. The other thing is that this URL is clickable here. So it will, assuming it went to the screen, it will pop out, and get to this advertisement, but it'll go to this page about GreenShot. It's the one that they put in the WinGet repository. So you can then just sort of double check that this is what you wanted. And then if I go to new desktop file set, WinGet, there are other things like Adobe, right? I want to get Adobe Acrobat on there, but I want the Adobe Acrobat Reader specifically. And you guys know Adobe's renamed things over time, and they've added like DC on things. Well, if I just do Adobe, I could pretty easily find it. And hey, I want to do the 64-bit, and then boom, it's in here. So you can really easily do this. And yeah, like PN wrote in the chat in response to someone, we're handling all the steps that you had to manually do before to make sure WinGet was functional. So really all you need to do is get to 15.4. Likely you should have a 15.4 agent on your machine, and you're off to the races. You can just create these and everything will work. It's really nice, very simple. If I was to talk about a limitation to think about, if you need to specifically deploy Notepad++ version 6, right? Version 8's the current one, but 6 is the one. Then this doesn't necessarily fit that. But aside from that, if you need to just quickly, there's a set of tools that you just want to get out there very simply without having to think about it. This works great, and it can keep them up to date. So it'll be a big time saver. I'm sure everybody has a collection of apps that would fit into this no matter what. And if you wanted to customize it, like I'm going to push out Notepad++, but I want to do some additional customizations, think about having a second file set that does those customizations and put them in a file set group so that they're together, and then you just deploy both. And then the app installs and the customization file set runs, and you can make those changes.
And especially if you use this to feed your kiosk, right? So if you have just an all Windows kiosk type of file set group, everything that you put in there will just automatically be in the kiosk for all your customers. So thanks for covering that, Josh.
Yeah, and there was a question about licenses. It handles this the same way WinGet does. WinGet doesn't, to my knowledge, handle licensing so well. It's more about things that you would get installed and then deal with any licensing stuff after. So
one thing you can do is that you can use scripts to your WinGet file sets. So if you know how to set the license via scripts, you can do that. As Josh mentioned, you can use another file set, which will put the license there. There is no licensing mechanism in place on Microsoft. Every company and every software vendor does differently. So, but with FileWave flexibility, you can do that.
Yeah, and I'll even show just visually really quick.
There is one question for macOS third party. Stay tuned. There is still some things to disclose in this presentation. Maybe just one last thing about what Josh mentioned about the versioning. If you are really interested in having fixed version or controlling which version of the app which will be installed, just tell us. For now, we haven't done it for the first version. We feel that this covers most of the needs. But if you need these kind of things, we have product board. Just give the feedback, and we will discuss, and we will see how we can bring this. So it's there.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then, like you could see, if assuming I had some mechanism to license something in this other file set, I could just deploy them both together with this. I could, I guess, use dependencies to handle if there's an order to things, but you can totally customize things. So that is that. And so I believe that was all I was going to share in the console.
It is indeed. And for those of you who are questioning, why did you do this thing for Windows first? It's because Wing It was way harder than using AutoPKG, which a lot of folks are already doing on the Mac side. So we started with Windows, but the next topic in 15.5 is looking at third party on the Mac OS side. So we're arguing internally about it, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Josh, you want to give us an update on the move to Debian?
Yeah. So everybody should know by now. We talk about it pretty much every Alliance meeting, and I've been sending out some bulk emails. And, so basically, at the end of June, the last day of June, CentOS is completely end of life. The CentOS organization isn't going to provide security updates anymore after June. So, if you have a server, a booster, or an IVS that's running on CentOS, we have concerns, because there won't be security updates, and everybody knows what happens once there's a lack of security updates. Then vulnerabilities are published and exploits are published, and so we just really want everybody to be, on top of this. And we've published documentation. When I last looked at this, I think last week, we had 127 servers that are on Debian. There's a very big number remaining. I know of a lot of customers, though, where you're waiting for maybe the school year to wind down, or there were a few customers that were waiting for a break that was coming up, a short break. As long as you have this somewhere in your plan to do, ideally before June 30th, FileWave will not stop working. So if it comes to July 1st, FileWave on your CentOS box will work. It's not going to break, but it will become much more vulnerable because of the lack of security updates. So you should just have in your mind that you really want to understand the process and what to do. And you would have gotten at least 2 emails from me so far about the migration. And if you have FileWave Server and you're running it on CentOS, you can either migrate to Debian or you can migrate to our hosted. More than 20% of our FileWave customers are on hosted. That's where we run the server for you, handle backups, handle upgrades. You don't have to think about it. And I think the pricing is such that it really is comparable to running it yourself. I think it's all really reasonable, and you may prefer that if you're not really a Linux shop and you've never really liked running a CentOS box, you could think about this. But it's very easy to get to Debian. We also have professional services that can work with you on a migration if you need somebody to do step-by-step with you. When you go to hosted, of course, professional services handles that migration. So just something to think about. No matter if it's server, boosters, or IVS, you have to move all of them to ideally Debian. You could also technically move things over to boosters from Mac OS and Windows are still supported. IVS has always been CentOS, so now that's only Debian. And for server, you could choose to migrate to Mac OS if you wanted to, but I feel like as a platform, running on Debian is a little bit more robust for a server environment. And you can reach out to customer experience. The email address is right there on the screen. If you have any follow-up questions about migrating to hosted or an on-premise migration where you want some PS help. And yeah, there's also on Discord, because I have the icon, every week I have a 30-minute window that works out great for North America and Europe. So you can join any of those on Discord to ask more questions, get a little more help, feel prepared for this. And as well, we do have a monthly session that is good for Asia Pacific time zones, where you're welcome to come there and ask as well. I should call out that 15.4 will be the last version on CentOS. So we're going to release this next version on CentOS, but then 15.5 that comes about 3 months later will only be Debian and Mac OS for server and IVS. Well, for server, sorry. Okay.
All right. So everything we've talked about so far, when we talk about 15.5 here in a second, it'll be the same, which is we put in a heck of a lot of effort into making things for you and building things for you and updating the product and new features and all this stuff. But sometimes you just get thrown a bone, and this is one of them. When it comes to data aggregation with Grafana, we got super lucky with something. We didn't build it, we just lucked into it. But there's a new way that you can do data aggregation in Grafana that is so much simpler than what it was like before with Prometheus. Although, as we said, we made Prometheus easier too in 15.4. So you'll be able to do that without what was complex before. But I've got something that I'm going to show you today that doesn't need a product update or anything to work. And it actually works really well. I'm just going to go do a quick little demo of something. So Josh, I'm going to steal screen sharing from you.
There we go.
All right, thank you. And now I have to figure out how to actually do that. There we go. All right, hopefully you all can see me okay. And what we're going to look at here today is, a report and a dashboard. So we're going to do this really quick. We're just going to create a new report here, and we're going to call this OS devices by OS type. Right, and this is not going to be a complicated query. I'm going to say that my device ID is not null, so that I'm only getting real devices instead of placeholders, etc. And then what do I want? Well, I want to see the OS type is really what I want to aggregate my data by. So I'm going to throw the OS type in here. Right, so now I've got the OS types and I've got device names. Device names is fine, although I always like to put device ID in there just because it's unique. So we'll throw device ID in there as well. Okay, so now I've got a report in my tiny little lab environment with 35 devices that shows me all the devices by the OS type. Okay, we've been able to do that for forever. So great. What do we do with that? Well, let's go over to Grafana. And so to do that, we're going to go into the web admin. And I can see that same report from here, but I can then integrate with Grafana. Now, we've always had this tabular data source thing that you might have seen in that screenshot before. And it was, basically next to useless because the only thing that you could do with that tabular data source was to show a table, right? So I'm going to create a new dashboard here. And I'm going to add a visualization, right? And I'm going to say it's coming from this tabular data source. And I can select that report that I just did. Now, I've always been able to do this, right? And I could show, oops, devices by OS type. There we go, right? And then I could do, a table visualization. I've always been able to do this, right? But it's useless because it's exactly the same as a report. However, with a recent Grafana update, they've added data transformation within Grafana. So we can go into this data and we can say that we want to do a group by. And what do we want? We can say, well, we want to group by the OS. So I want to group by the OS type. And then I'm going to simply count the number of devices. Oh, and look, I've got my aggregated data where I've got Android, Windows, Mac, and a count of each. I can switch the visualization now over to, say, a pie chart. Make sure that it knows to look at all values. And we can show the legend here on the right. And there we go. We've just added a visualization of data aggregation for our devices by OS type from that report in 3 minutes. So just thought I'd show you that real quick. This is another thing where we're going to go ahead and do the a Discord event on this, right? So we'll talk about that as well. And Josh, I think I'm handing back over to you now.
Okay.
If I can figure out how to end that, or you can end it for me.
I don't think I can end it for you. Oh wait, no, it says here. It's the little next there.
What's it? This?
It's the little two computer thing that's next to the microphone, and yeah, there you go. So there we go. And then for some reason, oh, I remember why the little panel went away, but here we go. I can share. So I wanted to show one thing real quick that I'm going to share my screen again because we mentioned on this slide how we remove the need to make these. Just cool thing to see what I meant by that is, let's say I have this this query here, and I go to edit it. Everything looks pretty normal, just like it would for a query, but there's this new tab, and I can expose the dashboard, and I can group by, and I can count by. And so where you used to have in the steps to copy the YML file to the server, all that's eliminated because you can do that right here by just checking a box. So if you wanted to do it sort of the old way, with a big improvement, this would be a big improvement. So you won't have any typos in your file. You won't have to worry about what to put in there and how it's formatted, and you can do that really easily. And then the other thing that can be done here that we mentioned, that I think this is very interesting, if you wanted to share with somebody, especially when I think about in Discord when people share things with each other, let's say you had a query and you want to share it with somebody, well, you can now export a query and I can save it on my desktop. And then if I wanted to import this as a new query on a different server, right? Somebody shared this with me, and I go, yeah, and it's the same exact query. So now we made another way to share content more easily. It also helps my team in professional services to be able to make something for you and give it to you rather than needing direct access to your server to necessarily make the thing. So I wanted to show that, and then I think we were back to here, and maybe I'll just maximize this. There you go, Tony.
All right, thank you. So what's later? Well, as I mentioned, we're negotiating on version 15.5 right now. I do want to highlight again what PN mentioned before about product board. You know, we as product owners would love if we move faster on every topic, and we'd love to work on everything all at once, but we can't because we're a finite team with an infinite list of things we'd like to work on, but we still want you to send us your ideas. The more of you that send us the same ideas, the more likely it is that certain things will be worked on. And, you know, our CEO, Leon, asked me yesterday, he said, Tony, you know, isn't it, you know, you keep asking for feedback on the product side, but you've got such a long list of things you could do. And I'm like, yeah, but we never know that next request might not be an absolute diamond and might jump right to the top of the list. So please do send those ideas into us, and you can get to that roadmap in the product board feedback portal in the knowledge base. You do have to log in to see it though. So just remember that. Right. So please do give us those ideas. But what are we working on? Well, we're continuing to work on Apple on DDM as we go forward with 15.5. We've got that Apple fall release hanging out there. It's kind of like Christmas in June for our developers. They get to look forward to finding out the surprises. And we don't know any more than you do until WWDC happens. And then we'll all know together. Right. So we'll see what's coming. We've got kind of a thing that we just kind of hold out there as far as looking at how our product is performing and making adjustments to that on the fly. We're working on the next step or looking at the next piece of doing third-party patching. Wing It is already done, as you saw in 15.4, but we're kind of arguing internally about auto PKG or install-o-mator and kind of kicking those back and forth a little bit. So if you want to give us feedback on that, please feel free. The Grafana plugin that you just saw me use, you may have seen the deprecation warning there. It said, "Hey, this thing is deprecated. You can't do this in Angular anymore," and that's being updated. We would have let that thing die because it didn't serve any purpose, but now that it does actually serve a purpose and it's really easy to use, we're updating that. And then Isla, I'm not sure if you got your mic working or not, but you want to touch base on the FileWave notifications?
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
We can indeed.
Okay, great. At least that thing is working. So regarding notifications, we are trying to implement an action that will enable all admins to send messages to devices. That message should contain like the basic things: who is sending, what is being sent, and also will enable you to put links inside a notification. It would be shown as a system notification for the end users but in background it would use kiosk. So for now, all platforms that we are thinking about supporting are the kiosk platforms, plus the Chromebook. Chromebook actually doesn't need kiosk because it will anyways open a new tab in a default browser. So we hope this will make your lives a little bit easier. Also, you will be able to set like a time frame for the notification, expiry date and time. So we are really looking forward to your reactions on this feature and possible improvements.
All right, thank you, Ava. And then the last thing, which is kind of the next iteration after 15.5, is a refresh on the software update side. We had a kind of a big meeting here internally this week talking about pieces of software update and how we'd like to fix some pieces of it on the reporting side, on the organization side, on the creation side. So all sorts of stuff coming on that side as well. So please do give us your feedback. And I think that's our last slide going into the Ask Me Anything. We only have a few minutes, but that's also the purpose of all these different Discord events, is for you to join us to talk about things in practice. So of the questions here, the first one about Windows management with Windows 11. Yep, IVS works with it, and there's no appreciable differences in managing Windows 11 versus Windows 10. The Windows updates to machines via FileWave. So that's some of the stuff that we want to enhance, is not necessarily the method of distribution, but on the reporting side, there are things that we want to enhance. But basically, you create a faucet. The faucet is assigned to the devices, and Bob's your uncle. The thing's done.
Yeah, I could just show real quick. I'll just show where it is in case the person who asked didn't know. But there's these assistants, find software updates, and then you could pick Windows, and you see like that there are updates here. I could search. There's like 20,000 updates in here, but if you do requested only, my lab is teeny tiny, but you can see one thing is needed, and I can just do this and create the faucet. There's a different workflow in Anywhere versus Central slightly, because it's different UI, but it is something we can go over in more detail in that Discord event.
Super, thank you, Josh.
And Mac OS updates. So that would be maybe PN would just repeat the move to declarative, right? Is the improvement?
Yep. That exactly is the case. So and again, that's in 15.4. Will there be a Linux client or admin? We get asked this question from time to time, and the answer is no and maybe at the same time. So there's no Linux client now. Technically, there is, before PN interrupts me to tell me that there is one, because some of our IVS appliance, for instance, technically has a Linux client in it, but we don't have a Linux client for distribution and inventory reporting and all of that. It's unlikely that we'll do that in the short term because we simply haven't seen the demand for it. We occasionally get asked for it from time to time, but it basically doesn't equal the amount of work that we'd have to put in to do it, and the number of things we couldn't work on to provide this. So it's unlikely in the short term, but if that starts to become a bigger animal, then yeah, we would certainly put it on the table. The client upgrade file set, that's a good question. I tell you what I do, but this is one of those things where FileWave, we give you 18 ways to do any one thing, right? So everybody does it slightly different, but I'll tell you what I do with my client upgrade file sets, and I will actually tell you what we're eventually going to do is get rid of them altogether, or at least make it so you don't have to do anything manually with it. The automatic deployment of the IPA for iOS devices is the first step in just making it easier to manage FileWave itself. So we'd really like it that you don't ever have to touch a client update file set. You don't have to download it, and you don't have to bring it into the system, that it would just handle it for you. But what I do with them today is I have a deployment that I've set up, or you could do it with an association. And so I have a smart group for my all Windows devices, and I have a smart group, or actually just a static group, for my patch devices. And so I have a faucet group that I call the current FileWave client, and I download the new client update faucet and I put it in that faucet group and then update the model. And that's the only change that I make, because that faucet group is already associated to devices. So I test it with my test group first. and then roll it out to production. That's what I do in my environment. Josh, do you have a different way you like to do it?
No, pretty much the same. I think this one is configured the way I do it. No, it's not. The other server that I'm not sharing has it set up for the upgrades. I think I switched over to using a deployment and on this server. And in the deployment, I just swap out which payloads or which file sets.
Yep. You want to show that? That's another way of coming about it. That's the thing, is there's no right way. There's just the way that works right for you.
So this was very much a lab where we were doing special stuff. So I don't have it set up for like a smart group, you know, to apply. I had specific groups, but I had the upgrade file sets. And because this one's limited to Windows machines, it doesn't matter that I've associated it to groups that have Macs as well. The only downside is that on all my Macs, I'll see that the Windows one failed because it didn't meet requirements. And on all the Macs, I'll see the Windows one failed because it didn't meet requirements. But this is a pretty easy way. I can remove these and then swap in 15.4.
And that's a topic that we've been having some discussion on as well, about whether we could maybe just handle the way that displays differently so you wouldn't see, so you could over assign basically and have a Mac file set that assigns to something, because some of that makes you have, you know, more smart groups than you might like, etc. So how about this last question on here, Josh, for the move to Debian?
So the ideal path is that you either, well, one, you're going to read through the migration documentation in the knowledge base. There's a pretty easy URL you can go to, go.filewave.com/Debian, to get all the links related to it. And then if you look at server migration and you look through this, and I would say you should feel comfortable with it before you start doing the migration. You can come to our weekly Discords, to any of them, to ask more questions directly. Let's say you want FileWave to do the whole process for you. Professional services can do that. You can reach out to us. It's just professional.services@filewave.com. Or if you're speaking with somebody in customer success in Scott's team, then they can route you to us. Or if you're working with support and they realize, that you need a bit more than break fix help, like, you actually want somebody to sit with them and go through the whole process, they'll mention about professional services. Now, if you go to do it yourself and you run into an issue in one of the steps, of course, open a ticket with Derek's team, a support case. Maybe our documentation has a flaw. Maybe you have a unique bug that is impacting you, where support should help get you out of being stuck. The great thing about server migrations is, until you get to the very last step of enabling the new server and unlocking your clients, you can always go back and bring up the old server, like nothing's been lost. And even after you've brought up the new server and unlocked your clients, you just would have to think about what changes have happened. It's now on a newer model. But I would say, if you encounter a problem in migration or after migration, go to support, as soon as you can, to see what's up. And just the other day, somebody was having a weird issue. They were in Discord asking some questions, and I just had Andrew have them have a quick call with them, because it didn't make sense, the problem that they were having. And in the end, it was just that the IP address, when they were setting the IP address in webmin, I think they weren't hitting save, perhaps. And so the change wasn't being saved. And when the server would restart, I believe it was going back to DHCP. And so every time it would come up the new server, it wasn't on its new IP address. And so obviously it wasn't reachable. But that was a quick call with Andrew. That wasn't paid PS. That was just us. We'll do everything we can to help with issues. But there is, I guess, a paid service as well from my team.
All right. And again, we did want to limit this one to an hour, and we just about made it. I guess we're right at an hour from when we started, which was 2 minutes after, 3 minutes after. So thank you, everyone, so much for joining. We really do appreciate your feedback. We love talking with you, and we really do want to see you over there in some of these Discord events, so we can talk in more granular detail on some of these things as we go forward. And Discord in general is just a great place to go to chat if you just want to get the ideas of what's going on with other admins. ins and get ideas and feedback from our team, that's the place to go.
Yeah,
So thank you so much. Thank you
to
everyone for joining. Yeah.
we record this. This will be on YouTube when Nina posts it, and then the Discord ones we're also recording, and we've recorded in the past. So even if you can't make it to the Discord event, you might catch the YouTube video.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Tony, Josh, Pia, and Derek. You guys have a great day.